Hi, I'm Gina, and I've been diagnosed with early-stage dementia, and I'd like to sing you a song. What would you think if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me?
Then I found some articles about the chemtrails, and there was a lot being said about it, and I wasn't too sure whether it was true or not, because in my state we rarely saw them. But as I started looking on the internet, and I would see these states in which there were these crisscross patterns, and they were very tight patterns, and these geometrical shapes, where it was obvious it was a purposeful covering of the atmosphere with these patterns. And the trails were so long. Well, now, we're starting to see them in my state, and as I look at them, they go from horizon to horizon. Well, I've been alive long enough to know that jets never did that in the past. And I see the same patterning effect. Now, where they're crisscrossing, it's an obvious pattern. And so I looked into the literature and some of the reports and YouTube videos, and they were saying that they were dropping one of the ingredients was aluminum. Well, I had done a fair amount of writing and research on the effect of aerosolized chemicals in the nose when you breathe them.
Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, and I'll try not to sing out of key. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends.
And what we knew was that these particles tend to travel along the olfactory nerves, which are the smell nerves in the nose, and it travels directly to the part of the brain that has to do with memory and emotions.
I need somebody to love. Could it be anybody? I want somebody to love. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends. Oh, I get high with a little help from my friends. Yes, I get by with a little help from my friends. A little help from my friends.
The hippocampus, the entorhinal area, and the prefrontal cortex, and that you can trace these chemicals traveling along that nerve and depositing in this area of the brain. The other thing that was known is that if you aerosolize aluminum, it's one of the metals that passes very easily along this track and directly into the brain, so it bypasses the blood-brain barrier and goes directly into the brain and accumulates.
How do I feel by the end of the day?
Are you sad because you're on your own? No, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends. Do you need anybody?
Well, if you do it in animals, it produces lesions or damage in that area of the brain, and the animal will begin to show changes of memory and learning and emotional changes. When we look at people who have Alzheimer's disease, ironically, the highest concentration of aluminum in the brain is that same entry point, what's called the entorhinal cortex, and the levels continue to accumulate. So we have compelling evidence that aerosolized aluminum alone will enter the brain and produce damage to that critical area of the brain. The worst of all is the nanosize. Now, nanosize means you make it such a small particle that it easily penetrates skin, it penetrates barriers in the body that normally metals cannot pass through. When you nanosize and produce these incredibly small particulate matter, it passes very easily. So when you nanosize aluminum and you use it in these aerosols through the nasal passages, it enters the brain in very high concentrations. And they find that the nanosized aluminum in the brain is infinitely more toxic. Now, one of the toxic reactions to aluminum is intense inflammation and activation of cells in the brain that are the immune cells called microglia. Aluminum is a very potent activator of these immune cells, and that triggers the release of a powerful substance called glutamate, which is an excitotoxin. It causes cells to die from an excitatory mechanism, kind of complex mechanism, but it is a combination of inflammation and excitotoxicity. And I coined the term in the medical literature called immunoexcitotoxicity to describe that process. So we know that occurs. We know it occurs very easily. Now, the reports are coming out now that what they're spraying is nano-size aluminum, and the idea is the whole concept of preventing global warming. And they nano-size the aluminum so it'll stay in the upper atmosphere longer, supposedly as a reflective compound, metal. The problem with that, even from a climatologic description, is that if you make it into cirrus-like clouds rather than reflecting it upward and out of the atmosphere, it reflects the heat downward and actually causes global warming.
What do I do when my love is away?
Doesn't worry you to be alone.
So you could envision that they're doing this on purpose to make the atmosphere heat up so they can see the atmosphere is warming up. But what I'm concerned about mainly is the medical effect, and that's because of this very strong connection between aluminum passing through this pathway into the brain is so strongly connected with Alzheimer's disease and other diseases of memory.
One in 3 of us over 65 will get dementia. There's no cure yet. So to become a dementia friend and find little ways you can help people like me, please go to dementiafriends.org.uk now. Thank you.
If you're aerosolizing this and spraying literally tons of it over the world, and people are constantly breathing that aerosolized nano-size aluminum, which will easily penetrate filters in your air-conditioned system, enter your home. So you're breathing it 24 hours a day, producing high levels of aluminum in this part of the brain, and the consequences could be absolutely devastating. Could cause a huge increase in Alzheimer's disease and inflammatory neurological disorders.